Okay, so regarding the last week's class, the whole thing is that there was also a comment that somebody made on the Facebook page, whoever looked at it, that you couldn't accept the fact that we're saying that the initial event that triggered the trauma, that created the trauma, the person who experiences it can seldom feel that this came from Hashem.
It's hard to feel that while it's happening, and even in retrospect.
And it can take years and years, and sometimes when it's a national trauma, when it's something, you know what, I don't like that word national, called collective trauma. For instance, the Romans destroying the temple, or the Babylonians destroying the first temple. These are collective traumas that we experienced. But 2,000 years later, or in the case of the second temple, 1,500 years later, the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, he's willing to look back at this and say why this is all good. And it was worth it. But you can only do that from the perspective of a few thousand years. So, for instance, worth it in the sense that we gain something from it. It's not trying to belittle the tragedy in it. It's trying to say that in the end, like Yosef says to his brothers, you meant something evil. We've talked about this in the past. Atem chashavtem lera'a. When you threw me into the pit and then you sold me to the Midianites, you meant to do me harm. There's no question. They meant to do harm. You can't take that away from them. That belongs to them. And we talk a lot about this, that I as an individual have to take responsibility for the negative things that I've done. That's what it means to begin to do tshuva. So you meant it in a negative way. You meant something evil. Ve'Hashem chashava letova. And yet Hashem at the same time has a larger perspective on what's going on. And he says, this fits into my plan. Even though I gave human beings free will, and they may choose to do evil with that free will that I gave them, I am not at a loss to carry out my will. And his will is all good, meaning that does not prevent him from attaining his goal. And his goal is all good. So there we have something that was in the perspective.
Who said what?
Joseph said to his brothers, you meant evil.
Yeah, after that.
But Hashem meant something good.
So what you're saying Hashem said,
yeah.
Hashem didn't say anything. Joseph said both sentences.
No, but you're saying just now, then you said Hashem, I gave humans free choice.
Right. Hashem is saying, like, the way that this was explained, I'm not sure that this is the best parable in the world, but it gives something of the idea, is that when you have a grandmaster in chess playing against a novice, so the novice is free to do whatever he wants. It's not like the grandmaster is taking away his free will. He does whatever he thinks he needs to do on the chessboard, whatever move he thinks he needs to make. But it doesn't matter how bad a move he makes. Right here, this is where the parable sort of breaks down. The grandmaster is going to win anyway. Okay?
Yeah, go back to the real thing. God said, whatever. Did you write it down, Miriam? Can you read it back?
I gave humans free choice, but it fits into my plan.
But it's not beyond me to continue with my plan, even when they abuse the free will that I gave them. Hashem gave the free will so that whenever we do good, it'll be credited to us. Even though He gave us everything, He gave us the world, He gave us our good inclination.
The part about the bad, when He gave us free will,
and when we use it badly, it's still not. It doesn't hinder Him. It doesn't stop Him.
But does it fit into His already chosen plan that
it's free will. It's free will. Hashem doesn't say somebody should do something evil.
Yeah, I know.
There's no such thing.
But it still fits into what he was.
But it's not going to stop his goodness from coming out.
He's not going to stop their badness either.
And he's not going to stop their badness either. That's what it means to give free will. But he knows how to play it the right way so that in the long run it becomes something positive.
Hashem knows to play it in the right way. So
He spins it if you want.
Hashem spins it.
Spins it becomes something like negative, so I don't want to say to spin.
That's good.
But it means like he knows what to do with it. This is still, as far as he's concerned, this is still very coarse matter with which you build the world. Even negative actions. So we can still take them.
Especially negative actions.
Maybe especially. I don't know.
That he would take and do something with.
And again, this is so when the Rambam looks at this, he says when people have free will, it means that they can do evil things.
Of course.
That's it. So that's why we said that when the initial trauma occurs, whether it be because some person did it to me, or because I was in an earthquake with a tsunami, or whatever it is, whatever caused the trauma, to live through it at that moment and say this is all from Hashem, that's a very high madriga. It's almost, okay? So usually, you can't say it the first time. When are you able to say it? Why does Hashem give you the rehashing of it, the flashback, the return to that initial condition when you feel it again as if it's here, but nothing's, everything's fine. It's in the middle of the day, nothing happened, and suddenly the person's full of an anxiety attack, doesn't know what to do with themselves. So Hashem is giving it to you because the second time around, and certainly after that, you can give it back to Him, meaning become aware that this is from Him. And when you become aware the second time, that's like healing, that's taking the bitterness of the second time and using it to heal the initial trauma also.
So this is why we have anxiety attack?
There's a thing now, this I heard from a friend of mine who's becoming one of the more important psychologists in Israel now. And he told me that the thinking now is that when a person has an anxiety attack or even a schizophrenic attack, whatever it is, it's not to try to stop it, not to give them drugs, not anything. Just get through it. Just be with them. And he says what they found out is that if you don't try to divert it in some way or stop it in some way, it'll last at most 45 minutes.
And then what? He'll be clear?
No.
He'll be fine for a while, and it may come back.
That's okay for anxiety,
But-
but schizophrenia, it's a little bit more complicated.
No, so it's a schizophrenia attack at the level that now he's hearing voices. And he's going crazy.
Okay.
He says that when people come into an emergency one,
They can be fine?
right. So he says you have to just be with them. Because they're hanging on to you. And when you try to oppose it, he says that the result becomes aggression on their part also. So he says that the right way they're doing it now, he says it has much better results. It's just to be. And he says, who taught us this? He says Reb Nachman. He says it's entirely from Reb Nachman. With the Indic, with the boy who thought he was. It's to be with him. He says that the people who take this as far as they can will do that. They'll get dressed, meaning doctors will get dressed as if they're patients, and walk into wherever, because people get really violent, so they're in a closed room. So they'll walk in, no straitjacket, nothing, and it'll just be with them. And it says and you just have to get through those 45 minutes. So describe it.
So
in any case.
Say it's an imbalance for the brain.
Could be.
But if it's only going to last that 45, if it's not going to cure them in any way, why go through it?
Nahon, that's why we have to add this. We have to add this part. that the person, I'm not talking about an attack that strong, but I'm talking about things like, again, a flashback to some trauma that you had, and what do you do with it? So the idea there was that it's like David HaMelech, who was traumatized by his son, meets another event which is not at the same level, it's not the same type of threat to him, but he treats it the right way, which is Hashem told Shimi to curse me.
Because
And that itself heals the initial trauma. So that's an idea that this is what bitter cures bitter means. And this was original, and this is taken from the Pri Aretz, from the Vitebsker.
So giving it back to Hashem means realizing it's
From Hashem. Okay. And he's the origin of this.
And that does seem to have a soothing effect. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay.
but does one need a certain amount of background information before that has the soothing effect?
I'll say it like this, that when you're the therapist, the question is, what do you want to heal? Or rather, what do you want to focus on in order to heal? Do you want to focus on the initial event that triggered the trauma? Or do you want to focus on what's going on right now? So the thinking is that if you try to go back before the person's ready for it, the only thing you'll get is resistance, and it may backfire. Meaning trying to tell somebody that something terrible, horrible that some criminal did to them was sent from Hashem, that's not going to build a lot of trust. And not only is it not going to build a lot of trust, it may it may give the wrong impression.
Hashem is bad.
Hashem is evil. And you can't, that's why we need achna'ah first. And the achna'ah says, first of all, where you are right now. Before we can even talk about something that's really, you have to realize where you are, ignore the difficult things for now. Where you are right now, that's the focus.
The hakla of submission.
Right. The submission here is just to give what I'm experiencing now back to Hashem. Okay.
How is that hafna'ah where you are right now?
In this case, usually we say that it's past, present, and future. Achna'ah v'daran taka. What we're saying here is that the achna'ah begins with those things that are here at the moment, not the positive things that Havdalah would deal with, but rather, what are you experiencing? Like a person comes and they're traumatized by something. What do you feel right now? Right now, you don't feel what actually happened back then because it's gone. You're feeling something else. So what are you feeling now? This is like the past, how it's appearing here. But I want it how it's appearing here. I don't want the original past because the original past is too strong.
Right.
I have to be able to first do it here, where I am right now, where I'm safe, I'm relatively safe, I'm in a place where I'm loved and cared for, and so on. So my image of Hashem also here is different. Hashem is he's nurturing here.
So that will treat PTSD, post-traumatic.
I hope.
Right?
I guess.
This fear.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Because when you're in it, you can't feel that
You can't.
at all.
I mean, I'm not saying that there weren't tzaddikim that were able to. There were tzaddikim that were on a different level because they're all the time outside of reality.
So it's like an opportunity that Hashem sends back, like the bitter waters, for the soul to do a process, to go through this process over time. And
Right.
I think it's repetitive. It has to be. It's
Yeah,
not going to
could
happen
be.
one time.
Could be
not
that
the
it takes-
second time. Because these things keep coming, and then
Good.
so that we
But each
develop
time,
a
apparently, it's
share.
supposed to be weaker.
Yeah, you develop a disability or instant response, and it's like a muscle that over time it will dissipate. Yeah, desensitization, yeah, and dissipation over time.
So, what we want to do now is talk about superstars.
Wait, I want to ask you, do you know enough about EMDR to say whether this would be good, this
do I know?
No, the this goes back to the past.
Yeah.
It's a neurological processing system.
Yeah, but it does.
What desensitization.
It is.
Okay.
But it's desensitized as they come to the past.
So I'll read it in English, and then we'll start from it. So I'm reading from this week's parsha, and actually it's from today's Aliyah. Sure, worked out. Okay. And more. Okay, so it's all of Vayikra is about the priesthood, but there's sort of a difference between the parshas that were before and this parsha, because this parsha is picturing something about the priests themselves that wasn't discussed until now, like how they need to be. Everything until now was sort of like, what does it take to make holy people? And here it talks about the priesthood specifically. So he says like this: Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, that they shall withdraw from the holies of the children of Israel."
What pasuk is this?
This is chapter 22, verse 1. So they can't eat from the regular sacrifices that normal Jews make. They have to eat from something of their own, so as not to desecrate my holy name. I am Hashem, Ani Hashem. Now he says something even more than this. Any man, so this is verse 4, from the offspring of Aaron, who is a mitzorah, right, a leper, or a zav, he has a certain disease that causes sperm to come out involuntarily, shall not eat from the holies until he becomes purified. And any man, and any who touches anyone contaminated by a corpse, or a man from whom there is a seminal emission, or a man who touches any swarming thing through which he can become contaminated, all these things. So again, he starts giving them all these things that they're not allowed to do. At the moment that they do it, they can't eat anymore from the sacrifices. But the main thing is, where is it? Sorry. It's from the beginning of this week, of today's Aliyah, sorry. So that's the end of it. The beginning of it started like this. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, "Speak to Aaron, saying, any man of your offspring throughout their generations in whom there will be a blemish," meaning some kind of bodily or physical blemish.
What pasuk is that?
This is verse 16 in chapter 21. "Shall not come near to offer the food of his God. For any man in whom there is a blemish shall not approach. A man who is blind or lame, or whose nose has no bridge, or who has one limb longer than the other, or in whom there will be a broken leg or a broken arm," even if it's something that's passing, like a fracture in a bone, "or who has abnormally long eyebrows, or a membrane on his eye, or a blemish in his eye, or a dry skin eruption, or a moist skin eruption, or has crushed testicles. Any man from among the offspring of Aaron who has a blemish shall not approach to offer the fire offerings of Hashem," meaning the korbanos. "He has a blemish, the food of his God he shall not approach to offer." This is an incredible thing. What is it saying?
Doesn't do the Avodah too.
Okay, it's not any Kohen who is not physically perfect can't
From birth or temporary?
can't do the services of a priest. Meaning, when he went into the temple, what did you see? Perfect people. The Kohanim were all perfect people.
Mentally?
Mentally, all the more so. If he has no doubt, he can't be a Kohen. So the modern person that reads this says, what kind of an uninclusive society are you trying to build here?
But Hashem made them like this.
And say it even more. We know that the most whole thing in the world is a broken heart. When a person is suffering, he's closer to Hashem. So why would you want people that are models to be the ones that do the service? I would have thought that it's completely the opposite. It should be the people that are broken, that are shattered. They would be closer to Hashem. They would be.
Maybe they had to do the same thing. Maybe somebody was shattered into the same.
So what?
Maybe they do the service for the others,
that's-
not for themselves.
What?
They had to do the same.
Okay. One possibility. And maybe you have to do things with joy. And somebody who's not. But a lot of times, the person who understands joy more than others is definitely the person who knows what the opposite is. And the person who's always had everything fine and perfect, he's never suffered from anything physical. He doesn't understand what to give thanks for, what to enjoy even. They enjoy the wrong things. So this is an amazing thing, that what we're touching upon is a very basic human trait that it's surprising at first glance, but it's exactly the thing that Hollywood does. You can't, normally in Hollywood, when you make movies, you have to take the people that are the best looking, the perfect diction. They don't do anything wrong. You ever notice that in movies they never say something wrong, like I do? I start saying a sentence and they never do that. What's going on here? Everything's perfect.
It's all false.
And so we have an image, especially the frum Jews who look at this and they say, this is something terribly negative because the world really isn't that way. It's all false. And yet, if you have half an eye for it, you see that that's exactly how Hashem wants the temple to look. That the people working in the temple, they're superstars. They're not regular people. They can't look like regular people. It's not a cut-through society, right? Like looking at the average, right? Moshe is standing there doing the avoda. Not at all. Even if he's just got a cast on, not here. You can't be part of this service.
Even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't because he had a speech defect.
Very interesting. It's very interesting. It's only about the priests, and it's not about the Levites. And Moshe Rabbeinu the Levites were divided into two. There were those who sang and those who opened and closed the gates or guarded the gates. Which group did Moshe belong to?
Right.
So he belonged to the singing group.
Maybe when
Which
he was
is-
singing, he wasn't.
Which is exactly one of the main things that people point out, that from this we learn that if a person who stutters sings, there's no problem. It's an incredible thing.
There are people who can sing and they can.
And then they stutter, and when they start...
Moshe Rabbeinu acted as a Kohen anyway. Originally.
So, for 7 days. Okay.
So what's the
That was
answer?
the-
Did you get to the answer?
So first of all, to know that this is the same, it's the same setup. It's a Hollywood set. The temple. No.
How does it fit in that
It's just that, yeah.
that if somebody dies, they can still continue in their avoda? It seemed that would be some emotional limit.
Good. They have to finish it. They have to finish it, and then they leave.
Yeah.
You have to finish what you started, but after that you're contaminated. Right? Can't be no upset people here. It's like if anybody ever saw the Truman Show. Everybody's smiley, happy, shiny people. Right? That's how it is. And so when you look at this,
At the end, you see.
it's something very strange, because really it's like saying there's a lot of room for this. So what's the thinking? What does the Torah want to tell me? First of all, you have to accept that this is going in that direction. You can say Hollywood takes it too far. You can say this, you can say that, but it's the same family. It's the same family of looking at how the world should be. So one possible explanation is that the Beis Hamikdash is not about the present. It doesn't touch humanity in the present state that it's in. That's not what it was meant for. Beit HaMikdash is meant to give you a glimpse of the future. And here we have three big principles that we won't go too much into them, but you'll see the idea here. That there are three principles that are related to past, present, and future in a Jew's life. The past is always Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's coming out of Egypt. You always have to remember that you were a slave in Egypt and you came out of Mitzrayim. That's about the past. What about the present? The present is, every moment in the present is that I'm standing at Har Sinai. That I'm being given the Torah right now at this moment. That's the present. That's why you could never think about the Torah as something that happened in the past, and you can never think about it as something that will someday be revealed. It is right now. This is in the psyche. That's how the understanding of the present needs to be. That the present is Hashem giving me the Torah right now. Again, this is a very ideal picture, but it's like a dynamic in the psyche that has to that when it connects to that, it begins to really live the present. When it connects to Egypt, to coming out of Egypt, it begins to really understand the past. And the future is the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash is always something in the future. Even when it's built, it still represents the future. It doesn't represent the present here and now. It's a place that's outside of time and space. And the main thing there is that even though Matan Torah was a very bombastic and great experience, and it's an everlasting experience, it wasn't necessarily above time and above space. It happened in one place, because the Torah still says it happened in a certain place. The fact that it's eternal doesn't take away from the fact that it happened in that one place. But the heart of the temple is what came out of the giving of the Torah, which are the tablets. And the tablets are already out of time and space. There's something external completely. They don't fit into the regular categories of time and space at all. The second ones also. So the second ones have more connection to, because originally Moshe chiseled them out of whatever he had. But when Hashem wrote on them, they took on the same supernatural existence as the first luchot.
The second one, Moshe Rabbeinu chisels and Hashem wrote.
Right.
And the first one only Hashem.
Hashem made everything. But they're still there. The shards are still in the Aron, in the Ark of the Covenant. So this is a general.
You're talking about the third Beit HaMikdash, or
So
the first and the second.
Even the second Beit HaMikdash
which was less.
was considered to be the third, meaning they were waiting for it to become the third. It's always becoming. It's always like, no, when will it come down? When will it really come down? It's like the temple creates in the person a yearning for the future. And so, why do we connect these two ideas? Because the Kohanim are that are serving in the temple, they're a picture. They're supposed to create a picture of what the future will look like. And the future, there is no malady, there is no illness, there is no handicap, there is none of these things. And so, if I come into the future and they tell me, right, that's the whole idea of a dystopia, right, as opposed to a utopia. Dystopia is like how most of the science fiction goes today, which is that you have nothing to look forward to in the future because well, we might know how to cure a few more things, but in the end, human life is just going to be a worse disaster than it is now. That's a dystopia. And a lot of people have that picture because of science fiction, that that's where it's going. And you never get rid of the problems, really. And the Torah point of view is that certainly the future is good. It's entirely good. And to give you some image of that, that's what the Beis HaMikdash does. And so the people serving in it are picture perfect, and the avoda is done in a picture perfect way. And everything is perfect, everything is in its rightful place. And there's a very interesting thing that it says, that you can't have anything that even resembles poverty in the temple. Why? Ki en aniyut bimkom hashirut. Because in the end, Hashem is rich, and if this is where He presents Himself, reveals Himself, there cannot be any sign of some lack, some poverty. So this is not just in the Kohanim, it's also in the building itself. If there's anything that needs to be fixed, it immediately can't be in the temple. You have to take it out. You can't leave it there. Okay. So that's one possible answer, that the Beis HaMikdash is a picture of the future. There's another answer which is a little bit more, which is a little deeper. And it says, why should a king have a beautiful palace? And why should all the people that work in the palace be what we call yes men? They're called yes men, basically. What do we mean by yes men?
They have perfect faith now.
Right. They basically applaud anything that the king or queen does, and this is the best. They never say there's anything negative. Why? Why would I want the king or queen to be that way? Let's say just for the king and queen. Why is it good for them, even without representing Hashem? What's the thing that makes it difficult for us to take on some new challenge or new goal that we have? Our failures. Yeah. I've already failed so many times. Why should this be any different? Whenever a person fails, it takes away. So we all know it's all my ego, it's all this, it's all that. It's true. But now, let's ignore that for a moment and say that most of the kings and queens in the world didn't take our class on rectifying the ego. They are where they are. So what's the most problematic thing that they will encounter in their lives? Failure. And if they fail, what's the result? Inaction. A fear to act. And I'm not just talking about kings and queens of old. If you follow any of the people that write about the presidency in the United States or the prime ministership in England or wherever it is, there's something called, they become trigger shy. That the leader becomes afraid to act. And why is he afraid to act? Because of a failure.
Performers as well. They can have one in their
Exactly. Same thing. Same thing. For years they won't go on the stage. As good as they are. And I can put this down from now until the end of time. You know we can. Because we know all about the ego. We know that this is all the ego. If you could just take care of your ego, you wouldn't experience that, supposedly. And yet, there is a place where you have to ignore that. Everything that we've learned about the ego. Why? Because I just don't have time for this nice king or queen or president or whoever it is to now go for a 10, 20, 30, 40, 70-year journey to fix their ego. that person is in that position. And I can't afford to have them fear their own decisions and not have enough confidence to act, even if they're acting because of ego. Meaning, what do I prefer? Do I prefer somebody who's meek and ineffective? Or do I prefer somebody who's effective and suffers from ego? So it depends where. When it's at the top of the chain, at the top of the hierarchy, inaction is worse than egotistic action. Inaction can cost lives. Action can also, but it's something else. And there's a lot to be said about how the Torah builds the concept of a king. There's this thing that the king always has to have yes men around him. We talked about this once, if you remember, maybe even more than once, that when David was old, says the Book of Kings, and we showed that he probably wasn't over 61 or 62. He had at least 8 more years to live. Yeah. But he felt old. Why did he feel old? He felt old because of his failure with counting the people. He made a mistake, and he counted the people. He saw that as an act of being a king, of having the power to know how many subjects he has, how great the Jewish people are. For him, that was to lift himself up, to feel, I'm the head of a mighty nation.
But didn't he know that it was not
So he made a mistake. The same way that he made a mistake with bringing the Aron at first on a wagon. He's not beyond mistakes. The result of that was that he became ineffective, and he began to close himself off. A lot of people died because of the count. It was a devil.
Yeah.
But the final result was that he knew where to put the Beis Hamikdash. That was the final result. That he saw the angel with his outstretched arm, holding a sword, and it was just over the place that we today call Har HaMoriah. He didn't know exactly where that place was before, and then he built the original altar there, even before the Beis Hamikdash was built. And he wouldn't have known, right, the spot was missing. The spot was missing. He didn't know where to build. He didn't know the exact location. And that's when he bought it afterwards, right? And then, right. Well, Aravna is the name of the Jebusite who owned the field. The story about the two brothers is from ancient times, a long time before Aravna.
So if he bought it, he did know what the place was. Right? So
He knew only after the whole plague occurred, and then he saw the angel with the.
So it's a good thing came out of it.
In the end, a good thing came out of it, like we said. But the way that it happened, and he fell from it. He felt that he had let the people down by doing what he had done, and so he became he secluded himself. And Otaniah came and said, "I want to be king." He didn't care. He didn't. Right? He couldn't be warm. It says the whole idea. He couldn't be warm. He was cold because he was ineffective. He was unable to act, and so it took a lot of work to get him interested again in being the king, because he was ineffective. He became completely paralyzed.
I don't understand. They bought that girl.
Right,
He had
right.
a wife. He had a wife.
He had 18 wives.
No, Bathsheba.
So that's when Bathsheba came and she showed him Shlomo.
But why did he need a
And she showed him Shlomo, and she said, Yechia Melech David Lo'olam, you'll live forever. So better get to it.
You're not answering the question.
What do you mean? What's the question? I didn't
Why
understand.
can Bathsheba do what that girl did?
It's not as interesting. She's
Said
older.
it's something new.
Hollywood.
Okay. That's exactly what it
I
is.
don't understand that today.
Why not? I think people perfectly understand it today. There's no difference. It's all the same. Okay, so that's why he says he had also male attendants who knew that this was.
But they say there was nothing there.
So in any case, the Torah is not afraid to tell me that that's what they did, and it helped, and it woke him up. But then the thing that really woke him up was when Bathsheba
The
came.
plague woke him up?
No, bringing the young girl who served him. It says she was never with him,
No.
but it was just having somebody young around. Just the idea of having somebody young around you, like young people, it makes you alive again. And you don't have to have any kind of physical relationship. It's just the fact that there are young people around. It awakens the person. That's why grandparents love having grandchildren
They
over.
don't have to be responsible.
Right, that they don't have to be responsible. Right, they serve them. If they're serving me, it's fine. If I have to serve them, I don't want to hear about it.
My work in Jared said I was playing in hematology, and there was this French man. I played me good at it, and he's sick, and everybody says, "Why don't you play love songs?" play Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, there you go.
I really, there was something to it that I took to my heart, and I really worked up with you, and I said to him, "You're right." He said, "That will, that will heal us." But there wasn't the eczema. There was something what he said.
Okay. So these are yes men. This is what it means, that you have to. Bathsheba coming and saying to him, Bathsheba wasn't very happy about what happened, but she came and said, "Look, ignore the whole thing about Adoniah. You're the king forever." Like, she was very hurt because he had promised that Shlomo would be, and he's not saying anything about Adoniah. Think about it. You promised me the car, now you've given it to my brother, and how do you come in? You don't come in, overjoyed and say, "Dad, you're the best." You say, "What did you?" But she came down and she bowed to him, and she says, "You'll live forever." That's like the biggest blessing you can ever get. And she says, "I'm completely with you. We're humble servants of it." And that awakens him. He says, "Even though I made all these mistakes, there's still, the people are still with me. My wife, who I promised everything to and I didn't give it, she's still with me, so get up." And it wakes him up. So this is the idea that when it comes to the highest echelon, you don't have time, or you don't work on externally reaching a state of meekness or a state of a rectified ego. On the contrary. And so from that we get the definition that you've heard many times, that kingdom, when it comes to a king, kingdom is lowliness. The experience of kingdom is lowliness. But for a king, the lowliness is on the inside. Lowliness being lowly. But on the outside, it has to be true pride. That his heart is prideful in the ways of Hashem. That he feels the courage, the strength, and most importantly the confidence of following through with what he feels. And for that you need a lot of yes men. The role of a yes man is not to make you into an idiot. That's not the role. They're not to make you uncritical and not thinking about what you do, but rather to give you the confidence that you're doing the right thing. Because in the end, if you don't do, meaning if you decide not to act or you can't act, you become trigger shy, everybody suffers from that. We don't have time for you to go on a soul-searching, whatever type of trip. We need you to act. And so, one of the main things, let's say about education, when we talk about educating children, chinuch, in the sense of raising them, we all make mistakes. We make terrible mistakes. But if you become trigger shy and you say, because of my mistakes, I can't raise my children anymore, I'm not worthy of it, so there's no room for that. You can't do that. You can do it maybe for a day, but you can't live your life like that. And so normally we say that the thing that balances lowliness is nullification. What do we mean nullification? I have a duty to do. Nullification really means I have a mission from Hashem. Bittul. And my self-nullification says I have to perform my mission whether I'm good at it or not. That's not the point. I received the duty that I received from Hashem. That's called Vayikbali Bo B'Dorchei Hashem. And interestingly enough, like we said, that a lot of times that nullification is bringing something from above below, meaning bringing my sense of pride in the ways of Hashem, in what Hashem has given me as my mission, down into reality. And saying I can't leave it up there, I have to manifest it down here in action. So if Hashem granted me the position of being a parent, I can't say, okay, that's on hold now until I assess where my ego really is. I don't have that luxury. And I have to act with the feeling and the confidence that I am entrusted properly. I am the right person to entrust with this duty. Nobody else can do this. In that sense, I have to feel perfect. You have to feel perfect. You can't feel imperfectly, okay, I'm doing things and it's imperfect, because the result won't be true chinuch. It'll be a sense of self-doubt. So the priests that are in the temple, they're like the yes men of Hashem. What are they saying to Hashem? Look at what a perfect world you've created. Hashem's not an idiot. He knows what's going on. He knows how hard the world is. He knows how difficult it is. But as it were, he's saying to us that even the divine soul needs to feel that it's doing things right in the end, and it's creating a perfect reality. Otherwise, it will simply not be effective. You need that feeling. So that's why, for instance, I saw this short video from, I guess it was a graduation talk from one of the colleges in America, one of the universities, and they brought some general from the American Army, and he has this talk about why you should make your bed in the morning. Yeah, you saw that? What's the main punchline in the end? That even if you've had a terrible day, nothing went right, and you didn't do anything right, but you come back and your bed is made, you have one thing to go back, that's your yes man. That's like the perfect place. You need that. You need that in order to go to sleep with the feeling that I can do something tomorrow.
Something is right.
Something was right in the end.
Did you say nullification balances
So
what?
nullification balances the loneliness, right? That I have a duty.
The visual balances the shift.
Right. Has to balance it. Say it in another way. There's a number of verses in the Tanakh, in the Bible, that talk about the existence of both an animal soul and a divine soul. One of them is something that we say every mincha of Shabbos. We say Adam uve'ema toshia Hashem. That mincha of Shabbos. Tzidchatcha tzedek le'olam v'toratcha emet. And then Adam uve'ema. The last few words are Adam uve'ema toshia Hashem. Man and animal you shall save Hashem, or you shall.
In Mincha on Shabbos?
Just before Aleinu, right? Just after the. What? Just before Aleinu, we say 3 psukim, and the Ashkenazim say it in a different order from the Sephardim. But of course, the right order is the way that the Arizal said to say it, which is like the Sephardim. Of course. Anyway. In any case, everybody says this verse, Adamu ve'ema toshia Hashem. You Hashem save animal and man. Man and animal. So the understanding is, you can't save one without the other. You can't save your animal soul at the expense of your divine soul. And you can't save your divine soul at the expense of your animal soul. What does your animal soul need? Lowliness. What does your divine soul need? Self-nullification. What does each one crave? It's completely the opposite from the other one. But it's saying that if you don't have both, neither of them will work out. neither of them will be rectified. You can't just rectify the animal soul. You can't just work on lowliness. You might say, the main thing I need in my life is loneliness. It's fine. Okay, maybe that's the... But really, it's a balance between the two. And a balance means, in the way that the Baal Shem Tov taught it, is that you're constantly a run and return between the two states. That's how they balance one another, because they're actually opposites. Lowliness is one thing, self-nullification is the other thing. They're opposite to one another. And yet, they both have to exist. And when they both exist together, they balance each other out. So here we have that Hashem is telling us, I know how difficult the world is. I know that Reb Nachman is going to say, En shalem milev shavul. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. I know that the people who suffer, they appreciate life more than those who don't. I know all this. That's all lowliness. That's all this. That's all the negative, the animal soul part of the world. But at the same time, there has to be a balance on the other side. What's the other side? The other side is the temple. This perfect reality. And it's an amazing thing that when we don't have a temple, I won't say for a moment, you won't catch me saying that Hollywood is the temple, but it's building on the same need that the human being has, which is that there has to be something perfect. Of course, because everybody's so broken, so the stories that they love hearing the most are not how Hollywood is perfect, but rather how all the movie stars are all addicted to something, right? So I'm not that bad after all. But that's nonsense, because you are what you are, and there has to be something that is whole. That's why people, by the way, on the negative side of it, they look for blemishes in all kinds of Talmidei Chachamim. They have to find where he's not perfect. He's not perfect. Well, why are you looking for it? Because he has to be like me. They don't understand the value, or it's like not willing to completely admit that there's tremendous value in there as being something. The pasuk says, "Melech beofiot techazena einecha," that your eyes should see the beauty of the king. There should be something that's beautiful, that's adorned, that's perfect. And that itself is the other side that you need in order to live in the world. So whether it's making your bed in the morning so you come back to a bed that's made, or it's how you feel. For instance, when cleaning the house is not a big joy. But the 2 minutes after it's clean, just before Kiddush, that gives the whole sense of what the future is, even though it's only 2 minutes. So, what can I do?
I think from a therapeutic context, it's a wonderful message to give to people that, because so many people today are in situations that are very far from being perfect, and there's a lot of brokenness. But to help a person create a vision of perfection, I know for myself that I'll use it. I could just fall into the brokenness of I can sink into the brokenness of my situation. But if I create and focus on what is beautiful and what is perfect, and create a vision of what could be perfect, it gives a lot of hope, and you can survive
On
what's
that,
going on,
right?
What's going, you can survive a test.
So what does this mean in practice? It means that after you feel bad, you have to go to the department store and buy something. It's not a joke.
It's a nice one.
It's not a joke. Yeah, some of you know Asher Crisp. So when I used to feel ill, he used to tell me, "What's the problem? Go to the bookstore and buy 2 books, and right away you'll feel different." So every person has their department store and what they want to buy, but you have to know how to use this part, and to use it really, in the end, is the figure, not of just myself, my divine soul reaching its potential and so on, which is the vision that I have to continue having throughout my life, but also the vision of a particular person or a group of people that for me represent what the perfection of the world looks like. So unfortunately, for some people, it is Hollywood, because they've never seen a really beautiful person. There was one Purim afternoon, that we were by Rav Ginsburg, and one of the guys got really drunk, and not like he usually is, like really drunk. And he started telling the Rav, "You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful." So he just went on and on and on. So he took it. So, but that came from exactly that person. He was a person who was very, very broken, and that's like for him. That's the picture that there is something else in the world.
So it's accepting that Hashem is perfect.
That Hashem. It's almost like we're saying here that Hashem Himself wants His house to be that way. Because in order for him to act in the world, he has to feel that there's some place that's perfect, and then I can fix the rest. But if not, but even if in my own house, in the end, everything I do is wrong, and look who comes to my house. See, you made that Kohen without a leg. You made that guy without an eye. It's even that his eyebrows are connected. He's not beautiful. Some people find it beautiful. I don't know why, but said it. Okay. Depends what part of the globe you come from.
There's a museum. Does anybody go to this music museum downtown?
I haven't been there yet. My sons were there.
Wow.
The 3D of the business
Out of
dash?
this world. They have this bigger than life 3D.
Unbelievable.
But there's a dash. It is so powerful.
Where is
Yes.
this? I think when we were in the first
Downtown. The whole thing.
It's by the
it's
by the Italian
It's
synagogue.
very small, the entrance. I mean,
It's by the Italian synagogue?
It's right there. It's right next to it.
yeah, it's a music museum. It's amazing.
Okay, so this is where we'll end now, and maybe next time we'll do another.